Praise. Wow. We have survived all but the weekend camp we have for the young adults, and so we're back in the saddle as far as teaching and growing. And if you're part of my class, and my life group that's going to be going on these next 16, 15 weeks, we're going to deal with different characters of the Bible and try to explain some of their story that many times doesn't get told. Or as one person has said, like the Paul Harvey version, the rest of the story. And so we want to cover these characters and really pull out. So feel free at any time. It's not me preaching, so if you throw up a hand, we'll stop. And this is a life group, so this is not a pastor lecturing, although I'm sure I'll do plenty of talking. But you raise your hand, you ask questions, you be part of this life group. It's a big room to have life group, but it's our life group. This is where we grow and where we learn. So our first character that we will deal with in these next several weeks, this is our first character for this week, and it's a man by the name of Gideon. Does anybody know the story of Gideon? Tell me the story of Gideon. He what? The Lord called on him. Yeah, to conquer an enemy, Okay, so let's look at this story of Gideon, and maybe you'll find out some things today that you're maybe not as accurate on. And hopefully it will help you see your life. If somebody asked me, tell me the story, and I try to do this with each character. When I'm working with people or talking to people about life, they'll say, well, Pastor Lott, here's where I'm at. And I'll say, that reminds me of the story of, well, in the story of Gideon, you can write this down. The story of Gideon reminds me of someone who never really believes who they are. The story of Gideon is the story of someone who never truly believes who they are. If I was to ask you tonight, tell me what God would have to do for you to never doubt Him again. Sounds simple. Tell me what you would have to do, what God would have to do. Brother Lott, if I could see an angel, an angel walk in here and just glow, have a sword in his hand, you think you'd ever distrust God again? Maybe. There's a lot of people through the Bible who saw angels. There's a lot of people that saw miracles. The disciples spent 3 years, saw Jesus walking on water and everything else, raising dead people, but when it got tough, what did they do? I don't know Him. It sounds simple, but in my life, I have to be very careful of this one thing, is I have to make sure in my life that I'm not looking for something or trying to reach a point to where I'm now never going to doubt. I have to, just on what I have, settle it. If I don't, there will always be moments in my life where there's options. So let's look at the story of Gideon, and I'll show you what I mean by this, because Gideon's story has so many incredible moments. Gideon, it starts in the book of Judges in chapter 6, and it'll go through chapter 9. And verses 1 through 24 is where we begin with this mindset of Gideon. And I'm not going to read all the scriptures, otherwise, if I read chapter 6 through 9, that's pretty much going to be our time. Is that understandable? Okay, so I'm going to highlight as we go through. Gideon was from a small clan, even among Manasseh is his tribe. But even among them, he is a small clan. Comes from a little bit of nothing. And so in this mindset, Israel has now turned away from God again. God has delivered them. They've turned away from God again. And they've started not listening. They've started not worshiping, not honoring God. And so there's this country called the Midianites. I call them raccoons. I always saw them as the raccoons because these are the Midianites. The Midianites don't fight. They don't want to fight. What they want to do is they want to sit back and watch you grow your crop. And they sit there and they wait until the wheat is just about ready to pick. And they're like, oh, it's time. And when the wheat was ready to be picked, they would come across, and I think we have one of the shots maybe of where the Midianites were in comparison to where Gideon was, I'm not sure. But they would come across the Jordan, they would come across the Red Sea area, they would come across this area, and right here, the Midianite, the Amalekite army across the Dead Sea, they would come across into this Jezreel Valley, and whoever grew stuff in this area, they would rob it, like raccoons. They'd wait to just, man, I'm going to pick them peas tomorrow. And you get up tomorrow, and guess what? There's not a pea to be found. And that was the Midianites. They would come, and it was not that people were dying. It's not that they were beating them up like the Philistines were brutal people. It was just depressing. Every time you just about get to thinking, all right, man, it's fixing to be good, here we go again. And that's an easy mentality to get in. One of the reasons, and you can put this down, one of the reasons why you will always struggle with believing God is because of this. In your life, there can be created a mentality that bad is always coming. Some of you in this room, your problem is not that you don't have as much good as bad. In fact, if you're here tonight, you're healthy. You're not in the hospital. You're not sick. But if I asked you, how's life going? It's all right. Because your brain automatically goes to what's not right and what's not fixed and what's not perfect. And if you live in that long enough, we call it a poverty mentality. When I moved to Forest many years ago, that was the first thing, the first 5 years of Forest. If you want to know what I did the first 5 years. And people will tell you, they said, man, Pastor Lott, he used to preach. I mean, just sweating. And if you were back then, you have to understand why. It's because I was trying desperately to break a mentality that, nothing good going to happen in Forest. My family's always been like this. This is who I am. And I would hear excuse after excuse. Anybody grow up around those kind of people? Anybody was one of those people? Yeah, because you grew up in that, and if you grew up around Forest 30 years ago when I moved here, that's the way it was. Because right when I got here, guess what closed? Sara Lee. Sara Lee shut down. Oh, that's just, and then something else took place. And man, it wasn't like I got here and we went uphill. I got here and we started downhill immediately. So you can imagine me preaching. We're going somewhere. We're going to do it. Pastor, everything's closing. It's bad. And it took a long time. Well, Gideon grew up in this. This is important to remember. Gideon grew up in this. So the Bible says that an angel of the Lord comes to Gideon. And Gideon has done this. It's not the time of the year for grapes. And it's not the time of the year when you would worry about grapes and people stealing your vine or your wine or anything like that. So what has happened is Gideon knows it's wheat season. And nobody from the Midianites are going to come looking for wine. So what does he do? He's threshing his wheat where? In a wine press. In a big old trough where you would press. He's doing wheat there because he's smart enough to realize nobody is going to be looking for me here. And he's thinking, I'm hiding. I'll get this little bit of wheat, get this to my family, and we will survive. And in that situation, an angel of the Lord appears to him. Go with me to verse 6. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. This was the situation that he was in. If you were to walk around and hear people or talk to people, this is what was going to be talked about. Man, the Lord needs to do something. The Lord needs to do something. Hey, we need God to do something. And Gideon was the same way. Go with me to verse 12. God does. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon while he's at the winepress, he says to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. Maybe you have it in your translation. But what he's saying is simply this, is that Gideon, I'm not talking about who you are. I'm not speaking to the person that everybody else says you are. I'm not speaking to the person you may even think that you are. But I'm speaking to the person that I see that you are. If you're in this room tonight, this is why that relationship with God is so important. That's why reading your Bible is so important. It's not about, oh, I want to read a few scriptures. I want to read a new story. When you're reading the Bible, what you're doing is you're allowing that word to tell you who you are. Some writer said, it's the greatest love letter that's ever been written. Now, in a love letter, what is that person writing about? Feelings, emotions. What kind of feelings? What kind of emotions? About what? About another person. Not just excitement, but, baby, whew, every time I'm with you. What are you are building up the person and saying, you complete me. You make me. Well, when God writes a love letter to you, what do you think? Huh? I'm not good enough. He's not talking about me. So, Gideon then, in verse 12, he comes and he tells him, you mighty man of valor. And like I just said, the problem is that when you're in that poverty mentality, even though God is speaking things to you, you can't receive them. It's very hard, even if Pastor Locke comes along and says, you know God loves you. I know. You know God's going to take care of you. I hope so. No. He's promised. And this is where that mindset has to be broken. Because if it's not broken, even the words of God, which are the very thing that you need to build your life, you can't do it. You can't be transformed. And so here's Gideon, even though an angel of the Lord shows up and speaks to him and says, you are this mighty man. This is who God sees you as. This is the person that God says, this is who you are. Gideon's like, no, that's not me. You got it wrong. But God, when He speaks, He always speaks to who you are. So Gideon then tells God, well then let me put you to a test. Let me try you because I need to try and see if this thing is legit. And he says, you stay here, and he goes and gets a lamb, and he goes and gets a ram, and there on this rock, on this altar, it's consumed, and he's like, okay. And so Gideon has enough courage then to call an army together. But not a lot of people come. It's not going good. And Gideon gets frustrated again. And Gideon gets to thinking, remember now, if you saw an angel, would you ever doubt? Well, Gideon starts doubting. So much so that Gideon then tells God, okay, God, if you really want me to do this, then God, I need you to show me another sign. But God does this time. He says, I tell you what, Gideon, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take it up a step. Well, what do you want me to do? I want you to take 2 oxen, one 7 years old, and I want you to go to your dad's altar where he's got built for Baal. And I want you to tear that altar down. And I want you to build me an altar right there where that is. And when you build that altar, sacrifice on it, then we'll talk some more. Well, by doing this, Gideon gets a new name, Jerubbaal. It means the hand of Baal is against you. So God now is pressing him to say, Gideon, I want to speak into your life, but you got to see yourself differently than you see yourself. And there's going to be some things I'm going to need you to do. So if somebody came to me and said, Pastor, I just don't feel like I'm right. I don't feel like I'm a good person. I don't feel like I'm the right person to be in church. I don't feel like I'm a good Christian. Well, you just need to get busy. You just need to volunteer for kids' church. You just need to start working in nursery. You just need to start. You need to, hey, can't you play guitar or something? Yeah, you need to get up in the band. Did you not hear what I said? I'm not there yet. Yeah, I heard you. But here's the thing. You're never going to sit still with the people you're still with and the atmosphere that you still have. He's not going to be able to sit in his dad's house looking out upon the hill at the altar of Baal and think to himself, I'm going to get better. There comes moments in my life I have to become active in the thing. Think about Jesus. When Jesus called his disciples, what was the process? Did they? Or did he just say, follow me? They left everything. Well, we know later how much they left because Peter went back to fishing. He didn't borrow no boat. He still had a boat. So what happens is we think, boy, when God calls you, you need to be. But really what God is wanting to do is to say, look, what I need to be able to do first is to speak identity into your life. And to do that, first, you're going to have to hear my words. And then secondly, when I ask you to do something, you're going to have to do it because that's going to break this cycle of you feeling like I can't or I'm not good enough, I'm not able to. It's amazing to me that once you start doing that, you start I can do something for God. Yeah, you can do a lot more. In fact, you just might be what God said you are. So when Gideon goes and tears down the altars, and people come to his house and like, hey, we're going to kill Gideon. No, hold on. His father meets him and says, then let Baal deal with it. And that's where Jerubbaal comes from. And you would think, okay, we're ready now. But remember now, Gideon still struggles with what? What's he struggling with? The identity of who I am. So he looks at God again. He says, look, I hate to do this. I really hate to do this. I know by now I should have done seen angels. You done blessed me. You saved my life. Look, could I put a piece of wool out tonight? And if you are really God and you really want me to do this, make it wet on the wool but dry on the ground. He gets up the next day. And he does just the opposite. One way or the other, he does it each night the opposite way. The next night, he just says, hey, I want the ground wet and the wool dry. And he gets up the next day and rings it up, and guess what? Nothing comes out. It's wet all over the ground, but there's nothing wet on. And he says, okay, I'm in. He calls his army. And well, this is where most of us catch the story, right? This is where he has 32,000 men. All right, we're ready. We're kind of serious now. Now, he's going to go up against 175,000. But if with the right strategy and a little bit of luck, 32,000, we got a shot. God comes to him and says, Gideon, if I let you win with 32,000, they'll say that it was you and not me. So you got too many men. You've got just too many men. I want you to take that 32,000 and I want you to ask them point blank, any of you that are afraid to die, any of you that are afraid of going into this battle, any of you that just like, look, I do not want to be here. My uncle talked me into coming, and I really don't want to come here. I don't believe we got a chance to win this thing. Any of you that says, hey, I'm in. I'm afraid of this thing. Then you go home. And you know, I've given speeches and said, hey, anybody that don't want to help, you know. And it's depressing when you see half or over half everybody like, oh, okay, Pastor Law said we don't have to be here. I was kind of picking. I was kind of just joking. But out of his 32,000, he's only left now with 10,000 people. 10,000 against 175,000. God looks at him and says, Gideon, you got too many men. You got way too many men. What is it that God is pressing on you that doesn't look realistic, that doesn't look possible? But he says, I want you to keep pressing that direction anyway. Now, it's not always something physical. It may be a child that you have that, like, everything in you says, look, I'm about to give up. I don't see how that's going to ever turn around. And God says, keep pressing. But I don't see it anymore. Keep pressing. Keep praying. Keep believing. Keep speaking it. I want you to, on your paper or wherever you've got your phone, or I want you to write down that thing that is the thing in front of you right now that seems like God only, in fact, God, I'm not even sure you. And we wouldn't say that out loud. But let's just kind of imagine it. We would think that. God, I don't see how you can fix this. And because of it, this poverty mentality of, well, I just need to be happy with what I got. I should be just happy with what I've obtained. It's not that you fight quitting. It's that you fight settling. Well, if it don't work out, at least I feel like I've done all I can do. What is the thing that when you think about it, and in my life I've had hundreds of them, thousands of them. I had one just this week when we had an accident from a man by the name of Jimmy in our church who a hydraulic situation blew up. They put a 3-inch, I don't even know how big a round a bolt you would call it, that lodged up in the middle of his face and went up almost to his brain. And every moment you walk in there, I would love to tell you that I walk into these situations every time, and it's like, I'm just walking in by the power. No, I prayed before I went. I prayed all the way. I'm like, God, give me strength, give me courage, because I got to look at something that every doctor standing around me is going to say, and I've got to look at every one of them and go, and I've got to look at nurses who are around me when I'm praying, and I know they're going to snicker. While I'm praying, and they're just kind of doing their thing like, hurry up and get through with your stuff where I can do the important stuff. Now, mine's different than yours, but they're all the same. It's when you walk into a situation or a situation wants to speak to you and say, It ain't happening. I don't care what God told you. You just want to settle for what you've got. The problem with us in most of the time in Christianity, we got a kid that's not working. Well, at least they're not dead. At least they're not in jail, or at least they're this. At least it's better than it could have been. Is that what God told you it should be? Well, then you hold on until it becomes what God said it should be. And that's what he tells Gideon. Gideon, I want you to hold on in the middle of this. I know you can't see it. I'm going to make it to where you can't see it. If you can see it, it's not me. If you can see it, then I'm not in it. Because the only time I ever work is when you know and everybody knows it had to be me. That situation that I just talked about, we got news today. The surgery went well. All that's left is just a ventilator, and I'm believing that that's going to come off very soon. Where they thought a lot of it, the face was tore up, it turned out it was just pushed up, that they didn't even have to do the surgeries they thought they were going to have to do. Man, I just about took off running a while ago in the back. Why? Because it takes energy to sit there when nobody's saying it and look at the wife and the daughters and the grandkids and everybody and say, it's going to be all right. And it's hard to look at a picture of a kid and say, it's going to be all right. Or to look at a situation in your life or at work or whatever it is. And God, it feels like you keep taking things away from me. And God's like, no. Let me give you a phrase. Pain. When you're experiencing pain, it is only the sign that good is coming. Anything you ever do in life where there's pain, pushing, lifting, if you decide you're going to work out and you think, oh, I'm hurting all over. You know what that's a sign of? Good things are coming. The body is changing. And it works the same way with God. It's like, do you feel the pain? Yes. Then that means something good is coming to him. And I've always had to hold to that. God, if it's hurting this bad, and if it's this hard to hold to it, and it's this difficult to keep hold of it, then boy, it's going to be, must be really good when it finally gets over this hill. And you would think Gideon is getting this. Gideon's getting this. So he does what God says next. Gideon, you got too many men. And what I need you to do, Gideon, is I need you to go down to the water brook. And everyone that just goes belly down and doesn't really look for the fight, and doesn't really, just tell them to go on home. When this test is over with, Gideon is left with 300 men. Now, he's still facing 175,000. The number on the other end has not changed. They did not decide, Gideon ain't got but 300. I tell you what, we'll just send a couple thousand. No, they still brought 175,000, whether there was 32,000, whether there was 10,000, or whether there was 300. And Gideon once again doubts. And once again, he gets afraid. And he tells God, he says, God, I'm not sure about this again. And God says, well, go listen to what they're saying. And he sneaks over to the camp. And as he's sitting there against a rock, he can hear from the other camp their conversation, and the guy saying, man, I'm telling you, I've had some bad dreams. I'm telling you, this thing, I just feel like it's fixing to go bad. I just had nightmares about what Gideon is. This guy Gideon. Have you ever met Gideon? I've never met him, but he must be one bad dude. He's sending folks home. Sending people home and coming after us. I don't need y'all. You're thinking of it as you see it, but God uses it as He sees it. He ain't even bringing all of them. But they say He's coming. And Gideon goes back and he says, guys, we got him. We got him. Here's what we're going to do. God gave him a plan. He said, I want you to get your torches and get anything and make loud noises and screaming and hollering and beating. And he said, you're going to take your torch and put it under a clay pot. We're going to surround them with 300 men. And when I tell you, you break that pot and let that light shine, that torch, and you start screaming like you've lost your mind and start running at them. Now, if I was one of the 300, I'm sure glad I passed the water test, and I'm sure glad I passed the not afraid test. Because if I'd have been passing the do I think it would work test, that's where I would have quit. But God never gave them the do you think it'll work test. Are you afraid? No, God. You ready to fight? Yeah. But here's how we're going to do it. Oh, man. And that is what they did. That night they surround them with 300 in the valley that I showed you. And at the right time, Gideon screamed and hollered and blew the trumpet. And when he did, they broke the land. And you could see these guys looking around. There's torches all around them running down the hill. They think that's armies. They get so at the middle of the night they can't see anything. All they're doing is seeing these lights coming down the hill, just coming down the hill, screaming at them. And somebody bumps into one. Somebody's kind of scared. He backs up into another. Next thing he knows, that guy turns around and kills him. And another one bumps into another one, and they kill him. And they don't even fight the fight. The Midianites get so disarrayed. Remember I told you they were not what? They weren't fighters. Let me tell you a lot about your enemies. Your enemies are not fighters. They're intimidators. They're backbiters. They're criticizers. They're sarcastic. They laugh at you. But I tell you what they won't do. They won't fight against your God. They just need you to quit the fight. The Bible says the Midianites were so dismayed and so disarrayed that they began to just go in different directions and running. I mean, a great battle has been won. Gideon is chasing after them and running after them. And as he's doing that, we get to the next part of Judges. And this is kind of an odd part because you would think that, man, God has done something really good and, man, now everybody ought to be celebrating. But listen to what happens. After the fight, in Judges 7 and verse 23. Judges 7 and verse 23. The Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them, so as far as Beth-bar. So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the water of the Jordan as far as Bethar. They also captured 2 of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb on the rock of Oreb and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon. Gideon, who was by the Jordan. You would think this is a great, great victory. But the Ephraimites, they complained to Gideon because they didn't get called to come fight. And Gideon tells them, hey, you have done a much greater thing than I have. I just got them all scattered. But you are the ones who went and pursued and killed the leaders. While his men were still hungry and Gideon was still pursuing, even some of the towns in Israel that he would go through and he would say, would you give us food? Would you give us, my men, water? Because we're fighting, we're pursuing. They said, no, we don't want to help you a bit. Let me tell you something about when you pursue and you fight and you do. Don't get caught up in who exactly is on your side. 2 Chronicles says this. It says, do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Take up your position, stand firm, and see the deliverance of the Lord. In Proverbs 18 and 24, it says this, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Gideon had realized that even though other people did not help me, even though other people did not protect me, even though God had given me a great victory. So with 300 men, he defeated the whole army of the Midianites. And that's the story of Gideon, right? Right? Anybody know any more of the story of Gideon? Well, let's talk about the rest of the story. You mean there's more? I mean, that's the only story I've ever heard of Gideon. Most people, that is the story they know of Gideon. But that's only part of his story, because from that moment on, go with me in your Bibles to chapter 8 and go down to verse 33. Not soon had Gideon died than the Israelites again prostituted themselves with Baals. What happened? What took place that caused such a problem? What took place that caused such a uproar in their country that this is what took place? Well, let me give you the rest of the story. As soon as Gideon had died, the Israelites again prostituted themselves to Baals, and they set up Baal-bereth as their god. And they did not remember the Lord their God, who had rescued them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. They also failed to show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal. Who is that? Gideon. That is Gideon. In spite of all the good things that he had done for them. What happens between this moment and what happened in the life of Gideon so that he basically ended up with this reputation? Well, go with me to chapter 8 and verse 22 through 27, and I'll show you. The Israelites said to Gideon, rule over us. This is after he's won the battle, he's won the war. Here's the rest of the story of Gideon. Rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you have saved us from the hand of the Midian. But Gideon told them, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. Hey, that sounds good, doesn't it? He's doing good. And he said, I do have one request. Oh, here we go. I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from your share of the plunder. Now, because of the tribe that they were, the Ephraimites and different things, part of their culture was to pierce their ear and have one golden earring. So when he asked for this, he says, I want every one of your warriors, every one of them to, and it ends up being quite a poundage of gold. So every warrior drops his earring. In fact, they took the purple robes that was on the two kings that they had killed, and they gave that to him. So you have the two purple robes, and now I do have this one request, that each of you give an earring and share of the plunder. It was of the custom of the Ishmaelites to wear gold earrings. They answered, we'll be glad to give them. So they spread out a garment, and each of them threw a ring from his plunder into it. The weight of the gold of the rings he asked came to be 1,700 shekels of weight, not counting the ornaments, the pendants, the purple garments worn by the kings of the Midian, and the chains that were on their camels' necks. Gideon made the gold into an ephod, which he placed in Ophrah. Okay, so what's happening, Pastor? Gideon says, I'm not going to be your king. I don't want you to make me king, but I do ask one thing. I want to build a shrine for what we've done. And so he says, if you'll give me these earrings, if you'll give me this gold, I will build. And so an ephod, if we can pull the picture up, I'll show you an ephod. This is the breastplate that goes over, you've probably seen the 12 stones, and where in Israel the priest wore the ephod. It was a golden garment that had the 12 stones in it. It went over his robe, and it was like a big breastplate. It's called the ephod. The only problem is that Israel already had an ephod. But Gideon decided that, no, I want to put this and make this to be something that we can brag about. Gideon made of it a gold ephod. He placed it in Ophrah, at the town, his town. All Israel did what? Prostituted themselves by worshiping it there. And it became a snare to Gideon and his seen angels. The wool fleece, 300 men. Come on. But Gideon didn't become king, but he wanted to feel like one. Gideon wanted to feel security and comfort. Let me give you a problem that you're going to always deal with following God. The world is always going to tell you and try to help you pursue comfort. That's why they give you retirement accounts. That's why they tell you at 62 you can start drawing some money. That's why they do all the things they can to try to make you feel like all I'm trying to do is get to. Let me explain something about following God. God has never been built on comfort. And here's why. Every one of you in this room, including me, is born in a specific thing and has a specific weakness. I'll go ahead and tell you mine. You can figure out yours. Mine is that I was born to fight. I was born to war. I live for the fight. I relish the fight. I love the fight. What's the worst thing for someone who loves that? No fight. Do you know what I fight with more than anything, Kenneth? You know, you've done pretty good. You've done more than your share. you ought to slow down. You know, you ought to start enjoying some of this stuff. You know, you need to get you, and even my people like, Pastor, you need to enjoy more. And I know what they mean, but I don't think they know what they mean. Is that if you take someone who what got you here was your ability and say, don't use that anymore, seek comfort. Just try to find a good place. For some of you, your brain, working things and doing things, I don't have that problem. Man, you've been working in business, or you're smart, or you can figure things out. You know what you need to do? You just need to pull up a chair, get you a Sudoku puzzle. You just need to sit in your chair and just enjoy life. Quit using those talents. You've done enough. But I can tell you, the moment you quit the fight, comfort is never. So here's the thing. What are you trying to say, Pastor? Die swinging. Your retirement in the glory situation was never meant to be here. Your retirement is there. Quit trying to make it here. If Gideon had just realized, Gideon, what's your strength? I do good when I'm scared. Well, what do I need to do? I need to keep putting myself, God, what else you got? Is there another group I need to be fighting? Is there no? Instead, he said, nah, I've been wanting to raise a family. And, you know, my hometown, I've always wanted to settle back there. And I'm kind of, you know, that scary stuff gets your heart rate up. The doctor done said my blood pressure's not good anymore. I probably just need to slow down. So he did. He built him a shrine. He had 70 kids. He had a lot of time on his hand. A lot. Had him concubines. 70 boys. He's doing good. Gets near the end, and he's got the youngest, the one that kind of coming at the end. He's got a concubine in Shechem. And he has a child with her. But it's unique in what he names this child. Because remember now, he's in the retirement plan now. And he's not scared anymore. He's just thinking how life's been. And he names the child Abimelech. You know what the name Abimelech means? The name Abimelech means my father is king. Hold on now. You told them you didn't want to be the king. But if you stay out of what you were meant to do long enough, you'll accept the retirement plan that the world offers. You'll accept what they say is, you deserve this. Abimelech grew up. My father is a king. My father is a king. That means I'm a prince. It means when my father dies, I should be king. It's what my dad taught me. And when Abimelech's father dies, in chapter 9, the next thing we read about is they have a getting together. But this getting together is where Abimelech kills 70 brothers. He kills the whole line of Gideon, except for one little brother. And in verse 20, I believe, of chapter 9, I'm thinking that's right. You can pull that up. I may be wrong. But if you have not let fire come out from Abimelech and consume you, the citizens of Shechem and Bethel and Milo, and let fire come out from you, the citizens of Shechem and Bethel and Milo, and consume Abimelech. This was what he cries out when he runs away, seeing his brothers dead, and he's trying to kill him, and he says, I curse you, Abimelech. And Abimelech gets the men of Shechem. He tries to become king, but what his curse was turned on him. And the men of Shechem, and Milo, and others turned against him. And the last leading son of Gideon is riding too close to a wall. And some woman who don't like him doesn't think much of him at all. You know how you got where they grind the flour, with them big old brocks? They call them what? Millstones. And she decided, I'm tired of grinding flour with this old millstone. And she took that thing and waited till he got right underneath that wall. And she dropped a millstone on his head. And that was the last son, other than the little one that ran away. That was Gideon's line. What are you saying, Pastor? Gideon is listed in Hebrews 11 as one of the mighty men of valor. I'm not trying to come here tonight and tell you, oh, Gideon was a bad... No, he's listed among the heroes of the faith. But he's also a man that never settled within himself who he was. Because he never settled who he was, later in his life, everything he had done was taken away. And that's the story of Gideon. The mighty man of valor. What God saw in Gideon was a man that when you're afraid, Gideon, you don't run from a fight, you run to it. You just need to stay where you're always afraid. I know it may bother y'all, but I always need to stay where there's a fight. I got to stay somewhere where we're trying to do something or taking on the devil somewhere or trying to... And I know I'll hear people say, Pastor, you're getting old. You need to slow down. And they're right. But they're also wrong. Because the alternative to getting that 35-foot yacht boat and doing a lot of deep sea fishing and getting a really dark tan would kill me. Doesn't mean I can't still enjoy some of it. It doesn't, but I can't live there. Because when God looks at me, Tim, doesn't say mighty man of valor. Maybe it said, Tim, I made you tough as a pine knot, boy. I made you for fighting. Don't you ever quit fighting. For some of you, whatever it is God gave you, don't you ever quit it. Don't you ever stop it that God gave you. Keep using it for God. Keep giving it back to God. Because it is the tool that you defeat the enemy and fulfill the purpose in your life. There is no retirement plan. But the one that we do have, the world doesn't know about, it's beyond belief. Before I pray, are there any questions, any statements, anything you'd just like to add? As I told you, I don't want this to be just a lecture of me. I didn't see no hands going up through the thing, so there.
I got a question.
Okay.
You said they turned back to Baal after he was out. What did Baal do to draw children of Israel to him? And where did he, what brought him on that they would keep turning to him?
Well, when you, like Gideon, when you become not completely committed, anything in their time, you would call it Baal. What would we call Baal today? What would we call Baal? Baal was a sun god, and Ashtoreth was the fertility god. So those are two of the biggest things that they had. So whenever they turned away from God, they either turned toward a fertility god or a sun god who remember when Elijah was on the mountain and he even challenges them, he says, we will challenge you to do what? Call down. I mean, he says, okay, I'm going to give your God the greatest opportunity. I'm only going to let him use his stuff. That's how humiliating it was to the prophets of Baal, because it's like, the one thing your God's supposed to be good at, he can't do it. But where it comes in our modern day, I'll give it to you. We would serve the God of entertainment. Well, it could be listed as things, but it's entertainment. Brother, I would love to do more for the church, but, my kids are in ball, and we got this going on, and we got that going on. It's amazing how I grew up going to church, and I went to school too. It's amazing how I didn't just go to church. I went to like 2-week revivals at a time. I don't see how my parents physically or emotionally were able to handle, because some of y'all can't hardly get from work to a little bit of ball practice into your couch, and you barely make it every day. You ain't got to plow. You ain't got to hook up a team. You ain't got to go out to the barn and get eggs. And you barely make it. Riding lawnmowers. We about to die on. Lord, I was on that riding lawnmower today, about to die out there. Don't even say nothing, Kenneth. And what I'm saying is, we serve the God of entertainment, because we don't need a sun god, and but what we need is the God of Netflix, or the God of whatever can entertain us, because some of us can't even sleep at night because we got to spend at least an hour on that phone before we go to bed, because we can't even go to bed without knowing what everybody else was doing and who all did what each day, and we're like, I have to be entertained until I can close my eyes and go to sleep. And the first thing I do when I roll over in the morning is I grab my Bible. I roll over and grab my phone and see what I missed. We're not much different. We just have a different God to solve a different problem. We need a God to entertain us so our hours don't bore us to death. Remember when our parents used to say, boredom's good for you, son. Makes you figure out something to do. Now, child, Lord, they cry 2 seconds. I ain't gonna. Here, take this. Right. My parents gave me a pack of socks. I had white socks and black socks, and my mom and dad said, here you go play with these. I figured out how you can make football guys with the arms and legs, and I'm sitting there playing with socks, and I figured it out. Figured out when it rains, you can float sticks down if you dig a trench. Got a river. I figured out a lot of things. But we entertain ourselves to death. If our radio ain't working, or air conditioner ain't working, if this ain't working, if that ain't working, if our microwave gets broke, we can't get our popcorn within 2 minutes. I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm just saying, don't we have a Baal? Don't we have a Baal? I mean, think of how crazy we go if the power goes out. I mean, if that power goes out for more than 45 minutes, we're like, sitting here looking at this candle, and I'm about to go. I'm like, well, go to bed. I can't go to bed. It's only 8:30, 9, 10, or 12 o'clock. I love y'all. But figure out what it is that's trying to give you comfort instead of what you're called to do. Gideon's problem was he was called to be this mighty man. He became this mighty man. But in his brain, even though he didn't say he would take the kingship, in his brain, he always wanted it. And as he got older, he even named his son, "Your dad is the king." And he raised children who weren't fully holy after God. He took a nation, and because he wanted to build a little bit of a shrine over here and didn't tell people, look, you need to go back to Bethel and you need to worship where the ark is. And no, we're going to have one right here. Because he did that, the Bible says he caused them to prostitute themselves. Be careful, because you can be a mighty person, a great person. But if you're always looking for your retirement, when can I sit down? The enemy will give you one. He'll give you one. But I can show you most of these retired people, they're not that happy. It's not as much enjoyment as it used to be. In fact, you watch most people now, they just keep working. Why? Because they don't know what their gift is, and since they don't know what their gift is, they just keep doing what the world tells them to do until they can't do it no more. That's all I got to say about that. Any more questions about Gideon? I'm going to enjoy our Bible studies. I hope you do too. I hope you take time to take notes and do this. And please ask many questions as you want. There's a list on the website, I believe, of all the different ones I'm doing. So even before I get to this one next week, you can already read the story, already have your questions ready, and you can just wear me out. And I'll appreciate it, because I enjoy studying and learning. So if somebody you meet always craving retirement, somebody you meet who has a poverty mentality, somebody you meet that always doesn't seem like they're fully committed, you might want to give them the story of Gideon. Tell them you don't want to end up like this. He's a great man, but he just didn't finish running. He quit running too soon. Will you bow your heads? Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for these incredible people that I get to spend time with. And Lord, you said every story, every scripture is for our learning. God, there's nothing wrong with slowing down some. There's nothing wrong with getting older. I understand that. But God, as for me, don't ever let me find a point where I don't have something to fight for. Not because I want it, but because I need it. Father, for everyone in this room who has gifts and talents and abilities, don't ever let them grow weary in their well-doing with it. Because that's what makes them who they are in the kingdom. They're gifted to sing, or they're gifted to think, or they're gifted to do projects and things, and you've given them gifts, and God, never let them quit. They may slow down, but that's not a retirement. We'll add all that up when we go home. That's the retirement plan. As Jesus said from his cross, it's finished. Lord, let me run until it's finished. In Jesus' name, amen.